Okay, well, good morning.
Good morning.
So for those of you who do not know me, I'm Christine Harriger. I'm the director of the Career Center. I've been here 6 weeks and 1 Tinker Day. So that's pretty good, right? Survived Tinker Day, feeling pretty good. How many people participated in Tinker Day? So what were your thoughts about it?
I loved it, except my legs are now dead.
Ditto. What about some of the rest of you? Any other comments about Tinker Day? Well, the reason I bring it up is your life planning is really just a culmination of all of these kinds of events and experiences that you participate in. So, while it's easy for many of us to say, no, I think I'll just skip that hike up that, 2,000-foot mountain, anything that you do in life is going to be valuable to you. Activities, part-time jobs, casual conversations that you have with alumni. So what we're talking about today is what your interests are. So the strong interest inventory, and everybody took it, right? Raise your hand if you, okay. So you get back this really lengthy interpretation, and it can be overwhelming. And I remember how that feels because I did that kind of thing too. So in career development, we used to really believe in peeling back the layers of somebody to kind of get at the core of who they really truly are. There is no assessment that will tell you what to do in life, as it should be, okay? Because I would hate for one piece of paper to tell me that I should be a career counselor when I've done many, many things. I've done everything from corporate training to recruiting, to admissions, and guess what, you guys? All the same skills used in different environments. Now, what the Strong is doing, though, it's talking about your work personality, what kinds of people you want to be around, what kinds of culture you want to be in. I was thinking about that this morning when I was driving over, because I live an hour away, and I flipped around and drove this way to Hollins to help this community. And I was thinking about how special you all were from Tinker Day. And I hope you all feel that too. So culture is really important. I encourage you in life, when you get up and go to work every day, go somewhere that you love. Be around the kinds of people that you want to be around. So find your people and do that. And then also common interests. So again, this is what the Strong measures, okay, is your interest. It does not talk about your ability, because ability is within you. So as you take courses and that kind of thing, you're going to get some clarity about, okay, I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I took that organic biology, chemistry class, and I'm not feeling that anymore. So that's ability, okay? One thing I encourage you to do is really figure out what gets you excited and what interests you, and really follow that, okay? So let me first of all distill a couple important points about this particular interpretation. So again, it talks about work personalities, it talks about work environments. So when I worked in corporate recruiting, it was quite different from being a career counselor. That's quite different from being a director, okay? Different kinds of activities involved. So this particular instrument's really good for helping career counselors like myself. It's also really good for academic advising. I used to supervise a team of academic advisors at JMU. So figuring out those subtle differences between psychology versus sociology in terms of majors, this tool can be very helpful. You want to, though, look for overall patterns, and you'll see what I mean as we kind of dig into the instrument a little bit more. So you'll get broad kind of occupational themes, but you want to look for what your pattern is. No assessment alone will tell you what to do, again, as it should not, but coupled with guidance from career counselors, academic advisors, people that are familiar, Abrina, other folks, we can get you where you need to be. But this is your journey, okay, of life. So as you take many twists and turns, you'll have to kind of reflect back. And that's why I really believe in teaching people the process, Because once they know the process, you can be 35 and be out living in Florida. And then you can reflect back on what you learned in this session and make some different career choices. Okay? So again, not a one linear choice. It's not definitive. There's a lot of stability. It's a very valid instrument. They compared it to the ASVAB, which is the military test that folks take that help figure out their military occupational specialties. So there's consistency there, but you don't want a test that's going to tell you exactly what to do. Please write down this tool right here, onetonline.org. onetonline.org. One of my favorite links ever. Anytime I'm doing a career counseling session, I pull this up, and I have it up in my office. It really tells you the reality of occupations, so you could look up what is it like to be a classroom instructor, and it will talk about the tasks, it will talk about the nature of the job, it will talk about what I like, related occupations. So sometimes you almost have it figured out, but you haven't quite hit the nail on the head. It'll give you a lot of good information about that. Can everyone see the screen okay? Okay. All right. So to tell you just very quickly about the theory behind the strong interest inventory, one of our main practitioners, John Holland, who I had the pleasure of actually meeting in person, it's amazing, developed this typology. It's called RIASEC, RISEC. So it stands for different types of things, which we'll go through. And it correlates really well with the personality inventory, the Myers-Briggs type inventory, MBTI. How many people have taken the MBTI? Raise your hands nice and high so I can see. So we can actually correlate it. So if you ever want an individual appointment, look at my strong, look at my MBTI, we can make that happen for you. Because there is a relationship there. And so everything is giving you a clue about the world of work and how you're going to best fit into that. So you want to look at all the different parts and pieces of it. But good interpretation is really the key. I have heard from many, many people, oh, I took the strong interest inventory and it told me to be a funeral director. And I have no interest in that. It doesn't tell you one thing to do. It gives you a theme based on interests and work personality. And within that, if you can identify those common possible occupations, that's kind of what it's doing. Okay? So that's really important for you all to understand. So it's going to first of all give you what we call GOTS, general occupational themes. This is who am I, what motivates me. Now, any kind of self-assessment comes from you. So you took an instrument, depending on how you were feeling that day, depending on experiences that you've had in your life, courses that you've taken, etc. You have learned certain pieces about what gets you excited, what motivates you, what kinds of things you like. It's reflecting that back to you. So it has general occupational themes, then it has the basic interest scales, and there are 30 of those, and those are like, what do I like to do in terms of interest? So outside of, academic classrooms, activities, all of those kinds of things are a piece of the information, and that's what the BIS measures. And then it gives you these wonderful occupational skills. And occupational skills, this is, I think, really valuable. It compares your preferences to people that work in the field. So it compared me to other career counselors. Do we think very similar? Do we get motivated by the same kinds of things? And the answer is yes, we do. But how does that compare with like human resources, which is another field that I considered, or recruiting, which is another field that I did and that I also considered. So again, at different stages of your life, and I won't always be with you, but I'm going to teach you this process, you can evaluate kind of where you are. So this is kind of a neat tool. And then it has some additional scales like the personal style, which talks about kind of your preferences with leadership and things like that. One time I worked as a military recruiter and counselor, and what I found is that a lot of times people love their occupation, and then they become in charge of something. And being a director or being a leader with people that answer to you, where you still have to get the role done, is a completely different ballgame. So I had a guy that loved being an engineer. He was a great fit for that. Then he became an engineering manager. Didn't like it anymore. So leadership is not for everyone. And so that's something that you contemplate. For some people, you just haven't had enough background yet, and so you'll get a pretty flat profile, and basically what that's saying is you just need to have additional activities and do a little bit more exploration. You're just not there yet. You haven't had enough to really give you a lot of variance. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So you should have a page that looks like this. Did they get a printout yet?
No, they have it live on their computer so they can go into the
Oh, you
links
have
with
it live. Okay. See, I'm from the old school. Nice printouts. So if you can find this similar page, we'll go through what the main GOTS are, the general occupational themes. This is really the guts of the strong interest inventory. So some people in life are very social. I'm a great example of that. Very social. Social types are really excited to work with people. Okay, so as a counselor, I work with you one-on-one, I work with you in large classrooms, I work with employers, so I meet all these different employers. To a social person, that is so exciting and motivating. So even though I'm juggling lots of different things, I love all the pieces of it. And that's what I want you to find, is what gets you excited, what gets you passionate, what fulfills you. And that is closely correlated to your interests and to your work personality style. Does that make sense? So even the order of these 6, social, artistic, enterprising, conventional, investigative, and realistic. The order makes a difference, and I'll explain that a little bit more. Artistic. Artistic folks are not just people like my sister, who is a fine artist who lives in Montana in this great cabin and paints every day, and that really is perfect for her. Artistic also relates to like creative people. Do you like figuring out programs? You know, so a part of what I do in my job is I figure out how I'm going to best convey different kinds of career components to people, and I really like that artistic side too. So we have found that it's important to incorporate that artistic part, but how much of that is really in you? So people that are good problem solvers, they might be a little bit investigative, they might be a little bit artistic. So if that's an important part of what you want in your life, keep that in mind. That's really important. People that are truly artistic, creative souls, if they don't feed that piece, at least as a hobby, they're very, very unhappy. Okay, so that's really important. Enterprising. These are the people that are your business people. You know, they want to blue suited every day, gray suited every day, go out, make a sale, interact and rub elbows with other people that they deem high status. So every occupation, every industry is different. So enterprising types often are in the corporate world, in the business world, but they might be leaders, maybe in political science or something like that. But that's what really kind of motivates them. Does that make sense? So I want, as we go through these, think in your mind. You might have answered a certain way on the instrument, but you might change your mind in this session right now. So I want you to kind of think, between these 6, what is your top 2? Okay, as we go through them. Conventional. I actually have a lot of conventional in me. Conventional types, they like office work. I love administrative work. There's something about preparing a program and putting the pieces together. I like putting together PowerPoint presentations. I certainly have a lot of administrative in me. A lot of people say to me all the time, Christine, I really don't want a job where I'm stuck behind a desk all day. So think about that. But having said that, 80% of the occupations require that kind of thing. But for your generation, you're going to work from home, you know, you're going to take your laptop out on the mountain, you're going to have some flexibility probably, and more autonomy than my generation did. But nonetheless, the conventional types, they really they're good with the data, they're good with administrative type thing, they like setting up procedures, that kind of thing, okay? Conventional, investigative problem solvers. So when I talk to employers, which I do every day, all day, they say, Christine, I'm looking for individuals who can solve problems. We have a lot of problems in the world, be it environmental science, political science, whatever it might be. If you've got that analytical ability, you've got that problem-solving ability, you've got a lot of that investigative piece, you're just wondering, how does that work? If you were one of those children that always said, why? This could be for you. It is often science-based or math-based, so it does require those abilities. You may have an interest in something, but you may not have the ability, or vice versa. And that's what makes figuring out what you want to do in life kind of hard, right? And then realistic. So my husband owned a company for 30 years, Manassas Granite Marble. He did kitchen counters, fireplace surrounds. He carved the last piece of stone that went to Pentagon for 9/11. He's very realistic, very hands-on, no pun intended. So realistic types want to move around. They want to be a firefighter. They want every day to be different, okay? So even if it's not a hands-on job like electrician, the variety that goes along with that is real important. So how many people like variety when they think about a possible occupation? Okay, so think about that. All right, so do those make sense? Those are your RIA-SEC codes. And those are your general occupational themes. And even the relationship on the hexagram is very, very important. So for instance, I have a lot of social, I have enterprise, and I have conventional. See how they're related to each other? They're close to each other in proximity on the hexagon. That means I'm very congruent. I also have a lot of artistic. What would be the opposite is really kind of the realistic piece, or from enterprising to investigative. You could have those pieces, but it might be a little more challenging finding an occupation that incorporates those, okay? So even the order can make a difference, okay? So the realistics are the doers, the investigative are really the thinkers, the artistic are the creators, the social, we're the helpers, we just want to make the world a little better place. Enterprising, very persuasive, conventional, organizers, okay? I have a nice office now of all kinds of organizers, so I can walk out and I know that Amber and Andrea got it. They're also great organizers. So that's really helpful. Okay, so those are the theme codes. You want to kind of, as we go through it, the general occupational themes down to the business, down to the occupational scales, it's kind of like a pyramid, inverted pyramid. So it's kind of like, you know, this is your country, this is your state, this is your city, in terms of kind of the order of how things flow. Okay, so the general occupational themes are kind of your wannabe codes, if you will. And the first letter is actually your motivator. So to me, I'm a social, enterprising, conventional, sometimes artistic. My CNA are kind of split. They kind of compete a little bit. The most important thing is the social. As long as I'm helping, I can be helping in a lot of different environments, and I'm pretty happy with that. Does that make sense? That is the most important thing I want you to take from that. So the basic interest skills, what I like to do, the occupational is kind of a reality check with the people that are working in the field and what's actually happening. So let's talk about the basic interest skills. These are really activities, projects, extracurriculars, if you will, leisure, and how they kind of relate to things. So you may get some interesting things in this. So a social person maybe is somebody who also enjoys spirituality, and that is a piece that you might do on the side that makes you kind of who you are. So a lot of times when people study abroad or they do certain activities like student government, all of a sudden they have an aha moment. I talked to one of your leaders yesterday. We were walking down the mountain and she said to me, her involvement in SGA is what helped her figure everything out. So to her, that was her aha moment that gave her a little bit of clarity. So it actually was more of a kind of an interest that led to that clarity. And then the occupational skills, this should be really helpful. So find this page, and you can see that actually one of my mentors, Kathy McCormick, I'll give her a little shout out, Dr. Kathy McCormick, correlated a lot of the occupations from the ONET, every single occupation, and really compared it to the Strong, even figuring out the order of the different letters, the main letters within the occupation. So you can see here in this example, a speech pathologist is social and artistic. Okay? A mental health counselor is very social, probably has a lot of investigative. So when you're comparing occupations, if you go into the onetonline.org, and you may want to bookmark that, and you look up different occupations. So for a lot of people, it's figuring out what kinds of occupations are in the world of work. So when I figured out, for example, that I wanted to be some kind of helper, then I thought about, do I want to be a mental health practitioner? You know, do I want to work with normal people with normal problems or abnormal psychology? Do I want to work in the education environment? Do I want to work in the business world? And I did that as a corporate recruiter, as somebody who gave a lot of presentations, corporate trainer. So thinking about what environment you want to work in. And it's a long journey. It's a long life. So you may start off in one area and you may pivot into another area. And then you may pivot again. So every time I talk to adults, they always say, I could use some help. I've never figured out what I wanted to do. And what they're really saying is figuring out kind of what's motivating them and trying things out in different environments and then finding the thing that really gets them excited. They haven't figured that out. Okay? And so this is a great advantage to you, and kudos to your instructor for incorporating this as a mandatory piece of what's going to really help you in life. So an English teacher, artistic, social, enterprising. Teachers have a lot of artistic creative in them. They like to create interesting lesson plans, bulletin boards, that kind of thing. But even thinking about, you know, do I want to work with what kind of population? Do I want to work elementary school, middle school, high school, college, corporate? So what kinds of people, day in and day out, do you want to work with? So I've worked with a lot of other social types that maybe they worked as a rehab counselor, and that population, for whatever reason, didn't continue to interest them. And that would have been a good opportunity for that person to pivot into a different, same skills, same activities, different environment. Does that make sense? Okay. So occupational skills are pretty neat because what they actually do is there's a test group of people that are employed and happily employed, and your results are actually compared with theirs. So there's to see if there's a relationship there. So the occupations that came up for you on this part of the instrument, they're not telling you you need to be a funeral director. What they're telling you is you have a lot in common with people that are in that occupation. Does that make sense? So funeral director, for instance, is something that came up for me, and that makes sense if you think about it. They organize somebody, you know, activities and work with the families. It's very much a social helping kind of thing. but do I want to work in that environment? Maybe, maybe not. But that would be really fulfilling, I think, to help people at that time of their life where they can't even think what they need to do. So using your organizational skills and your social skills to help people. Okay? So don't be miffed or confused by the occupations that come up. So how many people found an occupation under this section that would possibly make sense to them? Can you raise your hands for me? Okay. How many people saw an occupation that really confused them in this section? Okay. And that's the part that the strong interest inventory throws a lot of people off. And again, it's not telling you what to do. It's suggesting maybe you ought to consider researching these occupations, talking to people that work in these fields more to see if it could be something that might really, really interest you. Okay? And the midpoint with this, from about the 40s on, from this section on, there's a relationship, a positive relationship. So most of your scales will kind of drop off from there. So this individual is artistic and enterprising and has a relationship with public relations directors. So what does a PR person do versus the next person? An artistic, enterprising, a broadcast journalist. So what does a broadcast journalist actually do? Well, let's go into ownThatonline.org and look it up and look at the nature of what they actually do and the environment that they work in. What are those extra little pieces that we need to be aware of? The hours, do you have to work weekends? You probably do as a broadcast person. But how does that affect you as an individual in terms of what you really, really want to do day in and day out? So what is really leading the train for you? So this would be a way that, if I were this person, I would look up, probably the first 5 or 6, and look them up under ownThatonline.org and make sure you really understand what that occupation does. The other part that Hollins does that I'm very excited about is C3. How many people went to C3? So I came aboard as career director, and within 6 weeks, we made that happen. That's experience. Hitting the ground running. Thank you, Melanie. But basically, what it's all about is it's exciting to bring people that work in the field to hear from the actual people that day in and day out do an occupation. So then they can tell you, here's what I wish I would have known. And you can take that information and then you can go back and you can actually think about, well, working weekends wouldn't bother me if I'm doing something I really like. Or living in Alaska probably won't be a good fit for me, so I no longer want to be a wildlife biologist or whatever. Okay? So those little pieces of information are really, really important. So every adult or anybody that's working, those are the people you want to talk to. So as your career director, when I create programming for you, I'm trying to do things that will put you in touch with people. So from the real world, okay, as Sabrina is as well. So we're going to do a big reception where we bring in community leaders and different people from all kinds of industries, and we're going to teach them how to do the grip and grin. Hi, nice to meet you. So this is human contact. This is extremely valuable. Once you create those relationships, then you can have those kind of conversations like we're talking about here. And hopefully that will give a lot of you some clarity and help you start creating those connections. Okay? All right. In other pieces, there's additional things like the personality style. So this is just your work style. Do you like working with people? Do you like working outside? What kinds of things are really important to you? I love to use my dad as an example because he loved what he did. He was a forest ranger and a landscape architect. So on nice days, he'd go out hiking like we were yesterday. He designed the trail for Crabtree Falls. If you've ever been there in Virginia, the highest continuous waterfalls in Virginia. He figured out the hiking trail for that. So he'd look at a piece of land and say, we need to make this part a lake and a campground over here and a hiking trail here. So he had what kinds of skills, would you guess? Artistic, right? That's the architecture part. What other kinds of skills do you think he had? Realistic. That's very hands-on. Hiking the mountain, drawing even is very, very realistic. So you got it. So thinking about, what kinds of preferences you have are really important. So do you want something where are you comfortable taking charge and leading others, or would you rather just kind of have your own job and be good with that? A lot of people would. Are you a risk taker? The one thing I would tell you in life, I'm positive about this. As somebody who's had a side business, who's worked with non-traditional age people that are changing careers and reinventing themselves, the average individual plays it safe in life. The risk takers try things. So I've been at 6 institutions. Some people think it's crazy to go from one place to another. It's really scary. You got to meet all these new people. You got to learn all the new policies. What if you don't do well? You might fail. Yikes. So everyone has a different level of risk taking in them. Some people want to live in a big city or live, in the global world, live in a different location. So everyone is different that way. But the one thing I would tell you is you have to try things. And the worst thing that will happen is if you don't do well, guess what you're going to do? You're going to learn from that challenge. And you're going to grow even more. So I encourage you, especially the first 2 or 3 jobs out of college, try things on. That may give you the clarity. So I worked in a bank as a human resources individual. There were parts of that job I really liked, and I learned about the environment and what parts I like and what parts I don't like. As a corporate trainer, I did a lot of travel. That was great for me until I got married, and I wanted to kind of be home a little bit. So if we tell you one thing that you want to do in life, it's not going to work for your entire continuum of your life. It's going to be a terrific journey for you. So risk-taking, team-oriented, do you want to work individually? Do you want to work on teams? Employers are looking for people that are good team players. Do you know most people, they move on if the team doesn't fit them? So, and Abrina's shaking her head on this one, because she's learned that it's all about the goodness of fit. So when you're in an interview, they're looking at you and they're trying to figure out, is Christine going to fit in with the existing team? Because, these other people are great, and I don't want to bring somebody in that's not a fit. Is he or she going to fit with the corporate culture? So is it the right place? So your resume gets you the interview. The interview is really what helps you decide. You're deciding too. Is this the right next step for me? Is this the place for me? And truthfully, there are numerous places that we can all be at any given point in time, which is why it's confusing for people. So the cover letter kind of helps the reader know what to pay attention to in the resume. The resume fills in more details, but they really don't know until they interview you if you're the right fit for them. Does that make sense? So that's really important from the skill side of it. So you have preferences. These really are just kind of an add-on piece, the personal style pieces. And then it puts it all together for you in this nice kind of profile summary. So you can see this individual, they're social and they're artistic. So if they're going for a job that is really enterprising, it may or may not really be a good fit for them. The things that have developed their interests are some spirituality, counseling, teaching, communication. So again, we're not talking skills, we're talking about the work style and personality and how that fits into the occupations. And so these are different kinds of occupations that the Strong has come up with that says this individual should look into these more. So go to online again. look them up. You can actually see on the ONET, they've done great things just in the past 2 or 3 years. Those of us that have been a career counselor for almost 30 years, we would have loved to have had this a long time ago. But people actually coded all the different occupations, all the different industries, and they kind of put that information out. So you can find kind of your cluster of occupations a lot quicker. And then you can compare, in my case, social work versus teaching versus counseling versus recruiting. Can you all see the commonalities between those? So for a lot of people that are just starting, the hard part is they don't know the world of work. So how on earth are you going to figure out what you want to do in life if you don't understand the world? Okay, so get out there, be active, volunteer, talk to people, start figuring out that world of work part, and that's going to help you tremendously. And then the personal style preferences, and these are probably really helpful. What are you most different from? That can give you a lot of clarity. So I don't have a lot of relationship with somebody who's an athletic trainer. They're realistic, investigative, they have a little bit of social, but we're quite different in terms of the types of things, day in and day out, activities and occupations that we interest us. So then it gives you a nice little kind of list of things that you can look up. So, you know, I would check all of this out. And guess what, you guys, this is what I did. I actually used the Strong in my real path. A lot of career counselors will tell you they kind of fell into it, but I was very methodical about it. I figured out social and enterprising, and then I kind of compared to which occupations would fit better. And at different points in my life, I'm different kinds of things. So when I was younger, I was very enterprising. Now I'm very social. I just want to help. I just want to make a difference. That's the core of what's important to me. Some people, they just want to create, make the world a prettier place, a better place. They want to use those creative skills. Okay, so the next steps of things that you should do, and I've said it over and over again, is the onetonline.org. The other thing is the Bureau, the Occupational Outlook Handbook. So www.bls, write this down, bls.gov/OOH. That's the Bureau of Labor Statistics Occupational Outlook Handbook. It works very nicely with the ONET. It gives you even kind of a different contrast, and the tools kind of work together, but those are kind of the tools in the toolbox that the career counselors use. But again, a lot of it is subject to interpretation. So I have a friend that she would have loved to have been a counselor, and her academic advisor just kind of casually said, well, you know, you're going to need a master's degree with undergrad in psychology, so unless you're willing to do that, you probably ought to look at other options. So be really careful. Nobody knows you like you know yourself. And sometimes you don't even know yourself. So inside, we all have those answers. And that's what I want you to do, is reflect about it. We can talk about it, and that's what career counseling is really helping you think about, so what's really kind of important to you in the next first launch out of college, the first 1 or 2 or 3 jobs. Do you want to be in a particular environment? Are you excited about political science? Are you excited about the environment? So once we can kind of figure those out, it'll give you a basic direction, and then I just want you to know the process so you can continue to do that throughout your life. Okay?
Does your version on, for example, the top 10 where they're blue, does your version go live to the layers inside that bumps them to the OOH and the
It does.
on that? And there's so many things to be able to explore in there.
Yeah.
How do they make sense of it beyond the OOH and
Yeah, so then, you know, interpretation is really the important part. You know, I would say, you know, if you want further interpretation, please come see me individually, because it really does require that, you know, you don't want to misinterpret the information and go into a completely different cluster of careers, you know. So that's really, really important.
Did all of you click in there when you were playing around with one or two areas? Did you click in and see tons of stuff? So there's a lot more to discuss.
So for a lot of people, it's information overload. You know, so those questions about, so what are you going to do as an XYZ major, you know, are daunting. They don't realize, people think they're just casually saying, so, Irina, what are you going to do after you graduate? You know, they think they're asking a harmless question. And you as an undergraduate student are thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I really don't know. And guess what? That's okay. Because the world of work will help you figure things out. But if you're going down this path, you have this array of things open to you. If you don't like that, you need to go this way. And then you'll have these types of array of opportunities available to you. So the first 2 or 3 kind of twists and turns out of college are not going to define you. They are going to give you information that help you figure out the world of work. And it's never too late. It's more what you're willing to do. You know, are you willing to move to a particular place to follow your career? You know, what is really kind of the driving force to do? Okay.
What's the next best step for coming in for another conversation? What do you recommend?
Right. So, you know, feel free to compare your schedules to mine in the Career Center, and we can sit down individually and talk through it. And it's actually a fun thing to do. You know, it's really fun to figure out the pieces. And so making sure that you're interpreting it correctly and you're thinking about it. Often as a career director, I can get to know somebody and I can almost see it in them. So kind of like the Myers-Briggs type indicator. I can read personality types pretty well because I've studied them for a long time, and I can watch somebody and say, you know, they're actually really an investigative personality. And that little piece of information might be the piece of information that you need. So, but it is your journey, and it's up to you to kind of explore and have fun with it. Okay?
Is year 1 the time to come in?
Any particular time?
Is the first year? Is
Yeah.
it too soon? It's
Oh,
not
I
too
don't
soon,
think
right?
so. No. Because think about everything that you have to figure out. I actually, when somebody waits to come into the Career Center because they're finally a junior and they need an internship, or even a sophomore, I mean, the sooner you can start putting these pieces together and having experiences, the better. So that's why what really gets people employed are career-related experiences, internships. That's why we corral our alumni to create these opportunities in conjunction with kind of our corporate employers, because that will give you more information about what you really do want to do, or more importantly, what you don't want to do. So when I worked at JMU, I had an accounting student, and she finally got an accounting internship, and then she said, oh, I hate it. She came in my office, oh my God, I'm a junior, and I don't like this at all. She wouldn't have known that if she didn't have an internship. So whether it's paid or unpaid, a summer, semester, or J-term internship, it doesn't matter. Just get those kinds of things under your belt. If you don't do experiences while you're in college, it'll just take you longer to get launched. You'll probably still get launched, but that time will be kind of increased. And you might have a little more confusion because you won't have resources like this. Okay? All right, so come see me, and thank you for allowing me into your classroom.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? If you do, you know where to go. If you don't want to ask them here, right? Okay. I hope she's going to see 25 people in prom. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.